Morning walk, Patmos. I took one of the several roads leading out of the town, past the harbour and along the eucalyptus-lined road that lies at the eastern end of the town. The sun had appeared after a gloomy start to the day, and the sea, which spread gloriously all along to the left of me as I went, had changed from a metallic grey to a deep translucent blue. It filled every craggy bay and cove and enveloped all the islands that floated like a flotilla as far as the eye could see, to the horizon and beyond. The eucalyptus afforded me some shade, for now the day was warming, and I was getting hot in the greatcoat I was wearing, having set off whilst the morning was still chilly. To my right, hills rose steeply, crisscrossed by a maze of stone walls. Very little traffic was on the road, and the only sounds were from the eucalyptus trees, with their smooth white trunks, whose spear-shaped silver-green leaves rustled, and my curiosity, having been aroused by a strange tingling sound from up above me on the hill, I clambered up over the rocks to find that the sound was emanating from what appeared to be a hole in the ground, covered by a lichen-encrusted stone slab with an old iron handle worn thin by rust. I'm always quite afraid of things that might emerge from the ground, and at the same time fascinated by things subterranean and hidden from the eye. That was why the famous five were like my sacred books when I was a boy, all those secret tunnels and concealed passages under the flagstones of ancient ruined buildings, and behind sliding panels in old libraries of dark mahogany panels, and entering into them you were in a world of adventure and hidden treasures. Just such a maze of tunnels lay under Glencott, where I was a schoolboy, and with a couple of trusted friends we'd steal down into the cellars, where behind an old fireplace, voila, the entrance to the labyrinth. Just when it seemed we might really be coming into a whole hidden new realm, we'd always come up against a blank wall, behind which we calculated was a waterfall carrying the water from the caves at Wookey Hole, a mile or so away. I don't remember how we stumbled upon that concealed entrance. It was so long ago, but I remember the terrific excitement every time we got near it, and how it occupied our thoughts day and night. At night in the dormitory I'd read out the latest chapter I'd written during prep in my book, The Old Tower. It was about this tunnel. I had a captive audience amongst my dorm mates who listened with rapt attention, for we were all still of the age before the world has lost its sense of magic and mystery. But I'd have to keep my voice down low, for Ned, the headmaster, might be prowling the corridors, and if we were caught talking after lights out, we were in for a whacking, if not worse. But that's something I shall not enlarge on right now. So it was with an old familiar thrill of excitement that I realized what might be awaiting me under that great slab of limestone with the handle worn thin with rust. As I said, I'm afraid, yet absolutely fascinated by things which lurk beneath the earth. I heard the tingling sound again, and a lizard suddenly ran over the stone and scrambled up the rock which hid this place from view, and from there he stared at me, frozen into a half-raised position, as though he was in the middle of doing press-ups. She fixated me with an unflinching eye. I said to her, and I know not why, "I can't lift it now." I really didn't know what it all signified at the time, nor had I any inkling of where it would lead. But that night I had some strange dreams which had followed on from an unsettled, almost anxious feeling that had beset me the moment I'd arrived back at my lodging in the late afternoon. It was those lizard's eyes. No, I said to myself, it can't possibly be, dismissing the idea the moment I thought it and relegating it to the realm of pure fantasy. Unless, and with a jolt in the pit of my stomach, as that which I had so long ago lost sight of under so many layers of forgetfulness, suddenly came back in a flash. It didn't last, of course, but as in a flash of lightning, which for a split second every minute detail along with its shadow, it was enough to remember everything. I jumped to my feet as though a gong boomed and a bugle blared, right in my ear, like a thunderclap. I remember. It's why I came here. I remember my contract. And as I slept that night, after all the strange dreams which nevertheless seemed to arrange themselves into a pattern, kaleidoscopic, absurd, yet making perfect sense of everything, I finally dropped down into a deep well. Or let me say, half of me dropped. The other half was already down there at the bottom. Just as I'd seen her in the flitting dream, she was standing there as though she'd summoned me. I have already described her as she was in the dream, so I have no need to tell you again how she appeared and the effect she had on me. And as in the flitting dream, she spoke, and I had difficulty to discern what was her voice and what the sound of the wind in the cypress tree. But I knew what she meant, for the one word I caught unmistakably was kata, down, and she spoke it as a command. The way down was a slimy shaft with smooth walls, as of black marble, and it didn't end until I came to a gushing stream from a low tunnel which flowed across and into the tunnel on the other side. There was no light, but still I could make things out in the dark, for the darkness was so pitch black it was hovering on the verge of turning into its opposite, and the light was like that of the moon, that is, like the shadow of light that has no vitality. The stream swept me into the tunnel, for I had no power of resistance nor volition. The water was not water, it was unguent, and had the smell of iron as in blood. We came to a wide plain where nothing grew and was ashen white, and along the banks of the river a filthy scum had congealed from the detritus and the things that were flowing from the tunnel. Dead things and plastics and industrial waste, and all was as I had seen in the flitting dream. And then on the horizon, strange flickering flashes, which were not lightning, and a low rumble which seemed to make the ground shake, and in places it opened up with a wrenching sound, as of rock being torn, a long column of stooping apparitions which might have once been men, each with his hands on the one before his shoulder, and moving deeper into the direction I was being scurried along. I fancied one turned towards me, his face glazed over, and addressed me, but the light was flickering, and I was not, and saw not what his twisting lips were saying. And the next moment his head was removed from off his shoulders with a swift amputation, as though in some surgical operation. I was carried into a deep ravine whose granite sides rose up sheer and menacing, and I sensed all around malevolent entities, some of them in the walls themselves and others squatting on rocks. How I do not know. I had not hither died of fright, but I think some opium I had drunk and now was sipping through the chinks between the nerves. And then of a sudden the river was arrested in its flow, and I came to a standstill before a rock which divided the river into two streams, and there appeared on the rock what seemed to be a human being, a man so banal, so devoid of any kind of substance, a kind of composite of all the trivia, of all the most hollow sentiments, of gadgets and adverts and empty slogans, which were bulging and pulsing beneath his grey flesh and lifeless eyes, and he was performing some kind of horrid dance, jerking and stomping his feet, as though he was being animated by the malevolent entities all around. For he too plainly had no volition and no will apart from those acting upon him. And he was singing, I could just catch the words, I did it my way. And then the river flowed again and conveyed me left of the rock in the left-hand stream. I was glad to be in this stream. I'd noticed at the junction of the rock that all the filthy sewer-like offal and blood were being diverted into the right-hand stream, and here I suddenly found myself in the most pure and sweetest water I'd ever tasted. It was a translucent emerald green which swept me along as though I was wrapped in its arms, and all the terror and the fear I had previously felt, although, as I said, it had been ameliorated by the opium I had drunk, had turned into something I cannot quite describe, as I cannot compare it to anything I'd ever felt before, and to say it was happiness would be like saying honey is sweet while saying nothing about its taste and its texture on the tongue, for what I was now feeling was down deep below the surface at the very roots of emotion, vibrant and fecund and germinating in every cell and sinew and in my bloodstream, and supplying the nutrients to that very thing we call happiness. And the main component was, let me call it the active ingredient, that everything shone out from its core. Everything had meaning. A bird with a woman's head perched on the cliff above me didn't seem strange. I knew exactly who she was and why she was there. I even knew she had a name sometimes, and sometimes she didn't. Moira. And she was fate, and she was watching me being carried along towards the cave. Oh, the cave, just like Wookey Hole, like a great cathedral inside, with its echoes and its columns, its stalactites and stalagmites, and the whirlpool and the shadows and the tunnels leading in and leading out, and the luminous emerald water illuminating everything. Is this place inhabited? I wondered, as I heard a song almost like a whisper. We are the weavers, we are the web, we have come back from the dead. And the next thing I was aware of was going round and round and round and round and looking up as the whirlpool pulled me down and seeing all the stars on the ceiling of the cave, just as I'd seen them that night in Gibraltar, when I'd looked up when I was drowning and seen the whole firmament joined up like an immense web of light above the black rock of that strange bit of land jutting into the sea. This is the last thing I'll ever see, I thought to myself at the time. And the stars were all joined up. We are the weavers, we are the web. And I was going round and round and round, down and down and down to another level. Strangely, although I was going down, I had the sensation in the pit of my stomach of ascending, and the whirlpool had metamorphosed into a whirlwind, a tornado-like tube which deposited me onto the top of a tump-like hill, laid very gently onto that hill, as though into a cradle by some unseen arms. I wondered where I was. The landscape spread out all around me seemed familiar. I recognized certain things. In fact, everything I recognized, and yet I'd never been here before. Not that I could recall, anyway. And what made things stranger still was that the fabulous terrain which presented itself to my eyes everywhere I looked, seemed to be in a permanent state of being created, of being formed as I looked at it, so that it was always new, and yet it had always been there. I was puzzled by this, and yet filled with the utmost delight. My logical brain, what I had left of one, wondered if it might have something to do with suggestion on my part. If I imagined there'd be a lake there, there'd be a lake, or if I imagined there'd be a tower over there, there'd be a tower over there. But no, they were there anyway, I realized. They'd always been there, and yet, were they there a moment ago? Don't think, I thought, it's easier. And then I heard the command again, kata, and I started to descend the hill. No sooner had I started than a hare sprang out in front of me, stood up on its hind legs, looked at me a moment, and then started off in a spiralling manner, as hares do, round and round the conical-shaped hill. I followed in her path, adjusting my gait to hers. I thought for a moment she spoke, but it was not speech, for it was written,